Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I hope you are all doing very well today. I want to share with you another memory that I have of a particular film that I think is fairly famous in the film fan circles, at least the ones that I am very privileged to be a member of. This is a pretty well-known film, and so I want to just share not an overview or review of the film as a whole, or as a work as a whole, but just a particular memory that I have, because I think it's one that is still, to this day, that is a very, it's a nice memory for me in many ways. The film is this film. It's called The Godfather. I will be talking, again, I won't be talking about the entire film of The Godfather, but I will be talking about particular details of The Godfather. And so if you haven't seen The Godfather, please stop this video, because the last thing I want to do is to spoil The Godfather for you. You should watch this film if you haven't. It's very violent, it's very intense, so perhaps it's not for everyone. So let me take that back. If you are not at all a fan of violent, intense films, this film is probably not for you. But if you're okay with that, and you haven't seen The Godfather, I would suggest that you do, because it is a film that is one that I have seen countless times. Godfather 2 as well, countless times. Yes, and Godfather Part 3 as well. I am fast becoming a greater admirer of that film than I was many years ago. So I am in awe of this film set, but in particular, The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. So if you haven't seen The Godfather, please turn off this video, and you can come back anytime. And at that time, my friends, you and I hopefully can talk about The Godfather. And please, now let me share with you just a particular memory that I have about this very special film for me. So, The Godfather. I don't remember a time when I didn't see this film, if you know what I mean. In other words, I think this is a film that I feel like I have always known. I don't remember the first time I saw the film, and that's because I think I was exposed to the film at a very young age. Maybe inappropriately so, but c'est la vie. My father was very fond of this film. He loved this film. And so I think it was that influence that rubbed off on me when I was younger. And when I say younger, I mean I was really young when I saw this. So I at least I saw some of the scenes that were quite violent when I was maybe 6 or 5 or 6, perhaps, something like that. And again, I should be very clear. My parents didn't force me. They didn't sit me down and say, you have to watch this. No, it wasn't like that at all. But maybe I had already gone to bed and they were still up watching this movie, the two of them, and maybe I wasn't sleeping, so I crept downstairs and I just peeked and just saw them watching the film because I could hear the noise. And so it was something that I sort of saw them watching, and that memory, generally speaking, lingered, and it was something that was very important to me. And I realized, I think, that it was a film that was important to them, and in particular my father. And so it was a film that therefore tended to seep into my pores at a very young age, such that I cannot recall the time that I actually saw the film for the first time in complete version. So in other words, it's a film that has always been with me, I think. And to this day, I'm just in awe of this film and The Godfather, and also The Godfather Part 2. I think there's some moments there that I'd love to talk about one day, but they are truly poetic, and I know the word Shakespearean is used a lot, but I really think it applies so appropriate. It's so apropos, The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2, and The Godfather Part 3 as well. But I truly love these films, and it's for that reason that I wanted to share this particular memory. And it involves my mother and father. And it's, again, one of those things that I think I will never ever forget. It's really lovely because it was, well, let me just explain. So again, this is for one more time. If you haven't seen the film, please stop this video, because I'm going to say something that is a pretty big spoiler of the film The Godfather. Okay, so you're still here, so I'm going to spoil The Godfather here. So there's a scene, of course, where Sonny gets killed, and he gets machine gunned down very, very violently. It's one of those famous, infamous scenes of The Godfather, where Sonny is just driving in a mad huff because he has received a call from his sister Connie, because Carlo has gone off again. And so it's this trend that we saw the seed sown already. Sonny being so angry whenever Carlo, Connie's husband, beat her. So he'd just go off and just explode in a rage. Well, this was another example. So he just exploded in a rage and just drove off without any guards or anything like that. And he was just caught off guard, and his enemies just gunned him down. So it was that huge scene, and it was just so shocking. And I remember this because, again, I shouldn't have been up, but I crept down the steps, downstairs. And this is when we were living in the United States, so I was still very young at the time. And I remember just peeking through the doorway and seeing the lights on, and my mother and father were sitting on the couch, and they were watching the TV, and The Godfather was playing. And it was a VCR, so it was a VHS tape. So they were watching The Godfather, and I remember the scene, and they were watching the scene, and it was a scene where Sonny gets killed. And so I'm looking at this on the screen, and I'm just so scared. Like, oh gosh, this is such a bloody, violent scene. But it wasn't really registering for me. It was just something that I was seeing because, again, I was watching the scene completely out of context. I didn't know, I wasn't watching the film with them, obviously, up to that point, so I wasn't following the story. But I kind of, it was, again, something that was in my pores, so to speak. So anyway, so I watched the bit where my parents were watching the scene where Sonny gets killed. And it was a very violent scene, and then boom, he's dead, and the film goes on, and you get that lovely, dark, sad scene between Tom Hagen and the Godfather, and Tom has to tell his Godfather that Sonny, his oldest son, has been killed. And so then it goes to the scene, then it goes on, and the film goes from there. So it's a very poignant, powerful moment in the film. And of course, it leads to a number of events that will change the course of the lives of these characters forever. And in particular, Michael Corleone. And so that's the key moment, or one of the key moments of the film that leads Michael Corleone on his way towards his ultimate destiny. And it was a very important moment because I remember overhearing my mother and father talking about that scene. And it was really great because I think my mother was watching the film for the first time. My father had seen the film, I think, many times before that because he obviously knew the film very well. But for my mother, it was the first time. So it was like my father was showing my mother a film that he obviously loved. and she wanted to watch the film with him because it was a film that she knew that he loved. And so it was really nice to see the two of them like that and watching a film and just sharing that experience with each other. It was really lovely, and I felt so warm, and I felt so comforted, and it was a really nice time. And I still remember also because my mother, she was so she was such a lovely lady, because she asked my father at the moment when Sonny died. She asked my father, "Oh gosh, so this means that Michael is going to become the Don, right?" I remember that. She asked, as soon as Sonny died, she knew that this means Michael is going to become the Don, right? And then my father listened to that question, and then he said, yes, Michael is going to become the Don, but you have to watch till the end. So let's watch until the end, okay? And then they both were quiet, and then they watched the scene that followed between Tom Hagen and Brando. So I remember that, and I think back on it now, and my mother was very clever when I think about it, because she didn't think about Fredo, right? Because Fredo was Michael's older brother, and but he got stepped over because that's the way Pop wanted it. So, but she, I think, knew enough to realize that Fredo was not going to become the Don, but that the person that was next in line after Sonny was indeed Michael. And so now that I think about it, I was very impressed that she was able to ask that kind of question. And so it's a really nice memory, and it's a memory that is one that I'm glad I haven't forgotten, because it's really nice to think of my mother and father like that. And this was many, many years ago, so it must have been almost 35, almost 40, not quite 40 years ago, but maybe 35 years ago. And so, my goodness, things that can happen over the course of 35 years, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I'm very much appreciative to the Godfather for allowing me to have this memory and to hold on to it for as long as I am able to, and to cherish it. Because unfortunately, and I'm going to say this, I don't mean to engender any kind of sympathy or anything like that. So please don't feel the need to send any kind of message of condolence or anything. I don't say that. What I'm about to say, I don't mean to engender that. So you don't have to feel obliged to say anything like that. But unfortunately, both my parents passed away much too young. And a few years ago, in fact, it was very sad because they both died very close to each other. My mother, unfortunately, was the victim of her own suicide, and this was a number of years back. And it was very sad at the time because, unfortunately, neither my father nor I was able to help her in the way that I think she wanted to be helped. And so it was something that we tried to do. We tried to help her with professionals, but unfortunately it didn't work out in the end. And it was very sad. And so it was sad, especially for my father too, because he had by that time been diagnosed with level 4 esophageal cancer. And so he was going through his own physical pains at the time, and then he lost my mother. And so it was a very unfortunate time for him as well, and then going through his own ordeal with cancer. And unfortunately, he lost that battle, and it was a very difficult time. And I must admit too that as much as I think back on that moment, or the moments, the last moments that I was able to spend with my parents. I think because of the intensity of the circumstances, and maybe other things too, that can happen with, I think, any family. But I think maybe it was a question, maybe it was a matter of me maybe growing a little bit apart from them from the outset, but then certain circumstances were such that it was very difficult for me to reach out to them, and my mother and my father. And I don't think we ended on the best of terms. And so that is something that, unfortunately, I think can happen, I suppose, between family members. But and I think I'd like to think that it has to do with certain circumstances that happened in their lives and in my life at the time. But it was a little bit sad the way things ended for a number of reasons, and I think partly because I was not able to, or I don't think I was able to have as close a connection with my mother and father during those final moments that I think I would have otherwise liked to. Now, I'm not saying it's their fault, and I'm not saying it's my fault. Who knows? Perhaps it was my fault. But I think what I want to say is that I am, again, I am very grateful, therefore, for a film like The Godfather, which is able to provide me with this maybe solace or this kind of memory that I'm able to hold on to. And that's what I love about cinema, is that it gives me this way in which I am able to latch on to certain things that I can recall in my life. And so when I think back on my mother and father like this, of course I have to remember the maybe not so pleasant times that occurred during the final year that they were alive. My mother was alive. My father. It wasn't as pleasant as I would have liked to have had it be. Let me put it that way. And it was certainly a time when I think both of them were going through a great ordeal in their own individual ways, of course. And so it was something that I wanted to reach out to them, but unfortunately there were impediments along the way that it was impossible to reach out to them, or it was impossible for us to connect in the way that we used to connect. And so with that feeling that I have about them in the final years, I look back on the earlier years with a great degree of happiness and a great degree of just joy. And of course, that's not the only moment of joy that I remember. There are many others with different kinds of films along the way. And so I still have a great fondness and happiness and warmth towards them in a way that I will never forget. And I don't think I will ever be able to, I think I will always express my gratitude towards them for what they were able to provide me and what they were able to teach me. And it was through them that I think I was inspired to fall in love with cinema in a way that I still am today. So I bring this up again to just try to express to you just how important I think the film The Godfather is for me, and in this particular context. And for that, I think cinema is oh so powerful, and it can be therapeutic. Of course, it can be very, I mean, it's not all wine and roses, of course. There are certain things about cinema that maybe I have to confront myself about. And to this day, there are many issues that I feel I must grapple with. Not constantly, but maybe on a fairly regular basis. And so cinema is at once a solace. It's also a teacher. It can also be a friend. It can be it can be cruel. but what's the phrase? Cruel to be kind, perhaps? And can be all these things, and that's why I love it so much. And I think part of that also is this idea of memory and the way in which it helps me to relive memories and to cherish them and to hold them dear, because I don't know if I'd be able to do it any other way. Okay, my friends, so thank you very much, and I apologize for the indulgence, but I hope you can forgive me. But again, this is a film that is very important to me in many respects, and so I just wanted to share that with you. But one day, hopefully, I can talk about this film and The Godfather Part 2, especially The Godfather Part 2. There's so many great things about that film I'd love to talk about one day. Again, there are not enough hours in the day, right? So, but hopefully one day I can address it. In the meantime, my friends, do you have any comments or thoughts about The Godfather, Godfather Part 2, or the Godfather series in general? If you do, please let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear about it. And in the meantime, my friends, I hope you are happy and healthy and well, and that you continue to watch a lot of great movies. My friends, thank you so much for your time. And until we meet again, cheers.